They cause cancers, they cause endocrine disruption problems. Most of your exposure, 93% of it, comes from eating meat and dairy products because it climbs up in the food chain so effectively. So you can get exposed living near these incinerators and breathing it, but it'll take you 14 years to breathe in as much dioxin as a cow will ingest by eating the grass in one day. And that dioxin will accumulate in its fat, which includes the milk and the meat, and anyone eating meat or dairy products is going to get that dose of dioxin, so it climbs up the food chain every step. Men have no way in their bodies to get rid of dioxins, but women have two ways. They're both involving having a baby. One is that dioxin crosses the placenta into the growing infant, and the other is that it comes out from the breast milk. So if you have a meat and dairy consuming mother breastfeeding that infant, then the highest impacts of toxic exposure like mercury and dioxins will go to that infant.
Pregnant women are told, oh, certain types of fish should be avoided. But what about all these other animal products which are introducing, imagine as the fetus is developing, introducing these very harmful toxins which create reproductive abnormalities, developmental problems, and hormonal issues right as the child is developing, the most critical stage of development.
It does make you worry when people say, don't you want to have a little bit of milk because you're pregnant? Don't you want to have some fish because you're pregnant? Who do you think is going to get the chemicals that are in that?
All these environmental toxins and toxins from the feed that they're being fed accumulate in their tissues and are released into the mother and unfortunately to the child when you eat these products when you're pregnant. So this includes antibiotics, hormones, steroids in animal feed. Commercial animals are largely fed GMO corn and soy, which are very laden in pesticides. PCBs have been banned since the 70s, but they persist in the environment. Dioxins, all of these compounds can create hormonal, reproductive, developmental damage as well.
Eating organic beef, poultry, pork, or fish will not help you avoid contaminants like mercury, like dioxins, like strontium-90, because they fall out over all sorts of farm fields and water bodies, and they don't skip over the organic fields. And so really the contaminants are coming in regardless of how these animals are raised.
I had always been concerned about the possible health impacts of GMOs, but then found out that most of the world's GMO crops are actually consumed by livestock, with dairy cows consuming the most per animal. This fact, with everything I'd learned about bioaccumulation, made dairy terrifying, especially considering how much cheese I ate in my life.
Cheese is an amazing product when you think about it. It's probably one of the single best foods at compromising health that you're going to actually feed to people. Think about it. You've got an animal product, so you've got all the issues of biological concentration. You have a highly processed food product, and not only does it have naturally a lot of saturated fat, but you put a lot of salt into it.
There's a strong link between dairy foods and autoimmune diseases, and so that can show itself up as excessive production of mucus and exacerbation of asthma in kids who are prone to that, and even adults. And also there's an association between dairy foods and multiple sclerosis and type 1 diabetes, which is an autoimmune disease, and other rheumatologic problems.
Cow's milk is baby calf growth fluid. That's what the stuff is. There's absolutely no child or human on earth who actually needs the milk of a cow any more than they need the milk of a giraffe or a mouse.
Most people in the world are lactose intolerant. I mean, that's the normal state of affairs. Why would your body create this enzyme to digest lactose after weaning, after infancy? It doesn't make any sense.
73% of African Americans are lactose intolerant, 95% of Asians, roughly 70% of Native Americans, and about 53% of Hispanic Americans are lactose intolerant. Our government is encouraging Americans of color to eat foods that it knows is going to make them ill. Ultimately, what that boils down to is the government is telling me as an African American to eat food that's going to make me ill for no health benefit so that it will benefit dairy farmers. That's a form of institutionalized racism.
Yeah, milk is a risky food for human consumption. As a pediatrician, I see on a daily basis children suffering from conditions that are linked or associated to dairy consumption, such as eczema, acne, constipation, acid reflux, iron deficiency, anemia. Cow's milk protein is the most allergenic food.
People say, well, no, I want hormone-free, not injected with bovine growth hormone. But milk is this hormonal fluid, so it's just packed with sex hormones and natural sex steroid hormones like estrogen, progesterone. In fact, doesn't matter if it's conventional milk, doesn't matter if it's organic milk. Milk without hormones, it's an oxymoron. Organic dairy has just as much saturated fat and cholesterol and galactose and all the things that you don't want as conventional dairy.
Dairy products in general have a lot of other products associated with it, not the least of which is pus. I mean, they actually have laws limiting how much pus you can actually have in a milk and still sell it. I believe it's like 750,000 pus cells per cc. Because, I mean, you wouldn't want too much pus and it would be like pure pus. People might object. In fact, you could think of cheese as kind of coagulated cow pus, if you would.
But I was always told that we need milk for strong bones.
I'm Jane Chapman, and not too long ago, finally got some x-rays of the hips and back. Severe bilateral osteoarthritis of the hips. And actually, I'm scheduled for 2 hip replacements. That's bone on bone. It's the grinding of the joints. My stability is scary. I hold on to the walls if I'm at home. I've been told to use a walker. I'm only 61. This is not how you're supposed to live when you're this old. I have a really hard time believing that that's all that's left.
Researchers have studied bone development in kids and whether they get stress fractures and that kind of thing. And the kids who drink the most milk have 0 protection. Milk does not build strong bones. Harvard researchers have looked at a large group of older women. Over an 18-year period, the milk drinkers had 0 protection from fractures. So this old notion that somehow milk is going to build strong bones or protect your bones later in life, it's a myth.
People that drink milk have higher rates of hip fractures, have more cancer, and live shorter lives.
It turns out that countries with the highest dairy consumption also have the highest rates of osteoporosis, so clearly drinking more milk doesn't protect your bones. Doing more research, I found that dairy was linked to many different types of cancer as well. Just like many of us, I thought that the majority of cancer was due to genes, but only 5 to 10% of cancer is actually genetic.
Any cancer is caused by a DNA mutation, but that's not enough. So that can cause that first cancer cell, but 1 cancer cell never killed anyone. 2 cancer cells never killed anyone. But 1 billion cancer cells, now we're running into problems. So we need to reduce the growth factors in our body, like IGF-1. Insulin-like growth factor 1 is this cancer-promoting growth hormone involved in every stage of cancer cell growth and spread and metastases. Any animal protein boosts the level of IGF-1.
Dairy products increases your risk for various forms of cancer, especially those related to your hormones. So breast cancer, prostate cancer, ovarian cancer. So this is not a product, even in its most pure state, you want to be consuming because it does come with risk.
I found out that dairy can increase a man's chance of getting prostate cancer by 34%. And for women who've had breast cancer, just 1 serving of whole dairy a day can increase their chance of dying from the disease 49%, and dying from anything 64%. Why weren't breast cancer sites like Susan G. Komen warning everyone about this?
For calling Susan G. Komen, this is Jocelyn. How may I help you?
So we're wondering why you don't have a huge warning about the dangers of consuming dairy on your website when there's a direct link to breast cancer. There was a study published in the Journal of the National Cancer Institute that found out women consuming dairy who has had breast cancer increases their risk of dying of breast cancer 49%. I was wondering why it's not on your website.
We cannot answer these types of questions.
Once again, another health organization rep saying someone else would have to answer my question. Rather than risk being stood up again, I went straight to the local Susan G. Komen chapter to see if they would answer my questions. They didn't want to answer my questions in person either, and told us to stop filming, but promised they would connect me to the national office directly. Susan G. Komen's Pink Ribbon campaign had done a lot to raise awareness for breast cancer, although it was confusing to see pink ribbons on dairy yogurt containers.
Breast cancer can be prevented with a healthy diet and lifestyle, but we're not. We're talking about pink ribbons and putting all the money into research for the cure. I, for one, know that I would want my daughter, my mother, me, I want to focus on not getting to that point, and that's where I would like to see more energy and effort put.
I had been a hardcore cheeseaholic virtually my entire life, despite the risks, but like so many others, I seem to have been addicted to it.
It turns out that the casein protein, that's the main protein in dairy products and particularly in cheese, it breaks apart in the human digestion to create what are called casomorphins, casein-derived morphine-like compounds that go to the brain and they attach to the very same receptor that heroin attaches to. Don't get me wrong, they're not as strong as that, but they are strong enough to make you come back again and again and again, despite the fact that you're gaining weight, you're more unhealthy than you've ever been, but that cheese just calls out to people.
Casomorphin may play a role in SIDS, in sudden infant death syndrome, may play a role in autism. This is one of the reasons why we don't want infants drinking milk from cows.
Human breast milk has 2.7 grams of casein per liter, compared to 26 grams per liter for cow's milk. That's practically 10 times more. No wonder it's so addictive. This talk about addiction made me think about all the drugs animals are fed. I went to the headquarters of the Center for Food and Safety, the nation's leading FDA government watchdog group, to see how concerned we need to be about drugs in our food.
So that we know of, there are at least 450 different drugs that are administered to animals, either alone or in combination. These drugs are given to animals for a variety of reasons, very, very few of which are actually beneficial to consumer health.
We've got drug companies that work real hard to make sure they can sell lots of drugs to people raising cows, pigs, and chickens.
The pharmaceutical industry sells 80% of all the antibiotics that it makes in the United States to animal agriculture. Antibiotic residues are found in meat, other antimicrobials are found in meat, there has been ractopamine found in meat, there's been hormones found in meat. So right there you're talking about 4 different drugs. It could be, in the same piece of meat. The pharmaceutical company is supposed to show the safety of animal drugs. They're not really testing to see what the impacts of these drugs are on humans. They're really looking to see what the impacts of these drugs are on animals.
When we try to get information on some of the health studies and the environmental studies from federal agencies, we get back page after page of blacked out information because the company claimed confidential business information.
Consumers have no idea what is in the products that they consume.
So how sick something makes me and how bad it pollutes the environment is a secret for a company.
In the animal agriculture industry, as in the tobacco industry, these companies really have a vested interest in making sure that the public doesn't have information about their effects and what risks are really posed to consuming them.
Have this system where animals are living in their own waste. They're living next to animals that are sick or even dead, and they're stuck in cages with these animals. The bacteria tends to spread, so that the pathogens that are being created in these filthy conditions are breeding resistance to antibiotics, and the public are becoming exposed to those.
We already have people dying from salmonella and other things that you eat. We're having about 3,000 people die every year in the United States. That's more than the number of people that were killed in 9/11 in the Twin Towers in New York. If we had some terrorist organization killing 3,000 people a year, we would be all over it. The antibiotic-resistant bacteria deaths that we have, on top of that, you get 20,000 people dying a year. That's 7 9/11s every year. Can you imagine if that many people were being killed by some terrorist group in the United States every year? We would find them.
The World Health Organization has said we're nearing a post-antibiotic era in medicine. You'll be at risk in minor surgeries to have a fatal infection. You'll be at risk going to the dentist if you have a tooth extracted. Or it'll be like Civil War medicine. You get an infection in your leg and you cut your leg off. So you have this very dangerous situation. By crowding these animals in, they become a perfect engine for generating a new flu virus that can come out into the community. If you lived near a swine spray field, not even the CAFO, but the waste disposal field, you were 3 times more likely to have a MRSA infection. You can't see how it impacts the average person's life in Duplin County, North Carolina, and not be a little upset about it.
From an environmental standpoint, from a community standpoint, from all other aspects, North Carolina, we're in a state of emergency. We've already had bouts of swine flu, or H1N1 as they prefer to refer to it. That particular swine flu incident was originated on a farm here in North Carolina. There's approximately the same number of hogs in North Carolina as there are people. Between 8 to 10 times the amount of feces is produced by a hog, an adult hog, as compared to an adult human.
10 million pigs in North Carolina produce the waste equal to 100 million humans. This is the equivalent of the entire U.S. eastern seaboard flushing their toilets into North Carolina, but there is no waste treatment. The pigs' waste falls through slats in the floors of the sheds they are forced to live in. It is then pumped into giant waste pits, which leach into rivers and streams, and is pumped out unfiltered onto fields, further polluting the environment and neighboring health.
When you go back and you look at where these hog facilities are located, there's a disproportionate number of them that are located near communities of color, low-income communities. It is definitely a human rights issue.
My sister, she have asthma, and you know, her brother, he have asthma. He's 3, and we don't know what she might have. I have asthma, I have sinus, I have sarcoidosis, that's the bacteria, and I have a pacemaker, which is 6 sinus syndrome. But you know, mostly everybody in this neighborhood got asthma or either cancer. My neighbor there died from cancer probably just last year. My nephew down the street, he's got cancer. He's in terminal cancer, stage 4. Not a smoker, not a drinker. And it's not in his lungs. It's in his lymph nodes. But see, if you live here and saw the way they do, you wouldn't eat no pork. Well, I don't eat bacon because I know where it comes from. When they die, they go into a box and they decompose because they swell from especially from heat. A truck come and pick them up, take them to the processing plant in Rose Hill, round them up into feed, and feed it back to the hogs. If I come out this door, if he's spraying there, it's gonna come in my face. It hit you right in the face. Smell like something that you have never smelled before. It smells worse than a dead body. It's the family graveyard. I have my grandmother out there, my sisters, my brothers. When we go to the funeral, he used to spray.
During the funeral?
During the funeral, yes. During the funeral. Yeah, he spray. And when the people come, everybody be closing their nose up, saying how it stink. They can want to have a cookout on Sunday, he'll spray.
Do you think he does it on purpose?
I think so. Because he just sprays Sunday. He always sprays Sunday. And in most of these area hog houses and turkey house is in the black area or the Hispanic area. It's either or.
Do you think it's also a civil rights issue?
Yes. Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
There have been times in the past that I have gotten ready on the Sunday, gotten ready to go to church and come out, and the smell was so strong that I had to go back and regroup because it got in my clothes and I just couldn't go to church smelling like hogs, you know. I just couldn't do it. So I don't think the government cares. They care more about cooperation than do people, individuals.
And they're going to keep on. They're going to put more chickens in this state. This is the feast season. You're in capital of the world right here in North Carolina. My state. Look, there's a blue line stream right here come into my property almost, and the Contentment Creek right here. I've seen that blue line stream now filled with feces and urine from that hog pen, and they can say, well, we feed the world. They're not interested in feeding the world. They're interested in making money. You take the money away from them, they'll let the folks starve. Because if you want to feed the world, you can feed the world with more corn, using corn and wheat and stuff like that, and you can meat. Meat is a luxury item. When we're doing things that hurt other people, we're wrong. But a lot of good people will sit there and eat bacon knowing that it's causing someone else to be very unhappy.
I woke up the next morning to find the Burden River had experienced another massive fish kill from the pollution running off hog farms. Tens of thousands of fish were washing up on shore. All this talk about health, I realized that I was only focused on personal health. But health started to mean so much more to me. It was about health of my family and our communities. I couldn't under good conscience support an industry that I knew was harming others. Pollution from animal agriculture isn't just an issue in North Carolina, though. Raising animals for food produces more greenhouse gases than the entire transportation sector. It is a leading cause of rainforest destruction, species extinction, ocean dead zones, and freshwater consumption.